This is currently the easiest method on obtaining black powder at home. My chemistry knowledge has improved drastically, so now I can make much better tutorials. First, I'll show you how to make gunpowder, and then I'll show you how to use that gunpowder to make some pretty cool fireworks. Now, if you want your life to be easier, get a job and buy these 3 things. That's gonna be sulfur, activated charcoal, potassium nitrate. It cannot be normal charcoal, it has to be activated charcoal. I'll tell you why in a minute. And if you're unemployed, I'll show you how to make it fully from scratch. Although sulfur is unrestricted in most countries, so I recommend buying it because it's just super easy to do that. The first thing you need is some charcoal. Now, this isn't the stuff that you can just buy, and that's because I actually made it myself. So I'll show you how to do that. Now, you can't just use a normal charcoal briquettes, and that's because they contain clay and other things that will make it impure. Now, we're using pure charcoal because this has carbon inside of it. It's actually almost 100% pure carbon. Now, to make your charcoal, you're gonna need a metal bucket. I'm using the same one from the Metal Foundry video. Fill this up with as much wood as you possibly can because the more you use, the more charcoal you'll be left with. I left my thermite at home, so I'm gonna be using gasoline to light this. I noticed this was going by extremely slow, so if you wanted to make this go by faster, you could drill a hole in the bottom of your bucket to let air get through. You could use something like a leaf blower to supply even more oxygen. I can't do that, because I said I'm not gonna use tools. I tried stirring it around, but all I had was these 2 metal spoons, so I ended up just burning myself. So it's not entirely burnt, but it's mostly ash. So at this point, we're gonna add a bunch of water to it. As you can see, there is still a bunch of ash, but that's okay, because we only needed a little bit of charcoal for this to work. Now I'm just gonna add a bunch of water to cool this stuff down, and our charcoal is pretty much done. Once we've acquired our charcoal, we need to process it further. Generally in pyrotechnics, the finer that something is, the faster it reacts. So grab yourself a blender, throw your charcoal in, and put it on high. Now watch out for these fumes though, because I doubt they're very nice to breathe in. Okay, so we have our charcoal powder, but I doubt you can see anything because it's pitch black in there. So I'm gonna take this and dump it out. Now it's still pitch black, but that's charcoal. So let's do our next step. You need an oxidizer, but in most countries this is forbidden. So you need to buy nitric acid to make an oxidizer. So you need to download a VPN and secretly watch that video I posted on how to make nitric acid at home using electricity. Then secretly make it in your backyard without telling anybody. And then you can finally make yourself an oxidizer. But you probably have no idea what I'm talking about. So let me give you a quick recap. This time fully burn your charcoal into ash and then mix it with water. Now grab a strainer and strain out any remaining big chunks. Grab a pH strip and dip it inside of your solution, and you'll see it is turned the color purple, which means that it's a base. Using this pH strip calculator, you'll see that it is a number 13, so it is strongly basic. Using a plastic cup and a paper towel, we're gonna make a makeshift strainer. Poke a hole in the bottom for water to pour out, and then pour your solution inside of your cup on top of a mason jar. This process takes a while, but keep on repeating it until you get a clearer and clearer solution. Go for the color of pea. Obviously, you can make way better filters, but this is just an extremely simple one you can make at home for very cheap. There's potassium nitrate inside of our water, but without a nitric acid generator, we have no way to get nitric acid. So let me show you how to make that. I'm going to show you how to simply turn air into nitric acid using electricity. The process is simple. We're going to need to generate a high voltage electrical arc. So our first step is going to be finding something that can produce enough voltage. Because we need higher voltage, we can't rely on something like a 9-volt battery used in my previous videos. Now you might be wondering how I'm able to do this. Well, the ingredients in air are majority nitrogen, so we just need to find a way to separate it. Once we separate the gas, we just put it inside of water, then distill it. Then you're left over with some nitric acid. We're gonna need something that produces a lot of electricity that can still plug inside of your wall, which brings me to this neon power supply. As you can see, it also plugs into our wall, and it also conveniently has these 2 points at the end, which we're going to use to connect to our wires. This looks like the perfect example of what we need, so let's go try it out. Before it's usable, we're going to need to strip the wires, and you can actually do this with scissors if you do it carefully. Simply cut in a circle around the wire. Essentially, we need some sort of container that is capable of doing 3 things. It needs an access port to be able to produce the arc. Then through some sort of tubing, we'll need to pump air into the arc. Now once the air is plasmified, we'll need somewhere for that air to travel into a cup full of water. Now this is cool, but what if I could just get rid of all of this? And to make this way simpler, we're just gonna replace it with a piece of plywood, 2 metal straws, and a mason jar. Now let me show you why this system is just so much easier. Not only do these straws act as our copper wire, they also act as our tubing, making this impossible to leak. So now the air comes into this straw, arcs up at the top, and exits through this one, completely making the system 10 times easier. I'm gonna use this Dremel tool to drill a hole in my plywood. So we've drilled the 2 holes, and then I use super glue to seal it in the top. Now we can just put our mason jar over it. We still need to put some clay in between these 2 things, or plumber's putty. So we've sealed it and connected our wires. Now it's time to turn it on and put our tubing in. So our fish pump pipe doesn't fit on our straw. Instead, connect it to your latex tubing. Now take your latex tubing and put that on the straw. To pressure test, use a bottle of soapy water. So I just tested all of our seals and we have no leaks, so we're good to go. Now we just need to put our mason jar on and seal it as well. For this, I'm going to be using JB Weld, but you can use anything like super glue. Once you JB Weld everything, make sure you mix it together, and now I'm going to pressure test it. All of our bubbles are coming out the top, which means it's good to go. Just a friendly tip, make sure you let this stuff fully dry before you turn it on, because the heat will cause it to remelt. As you can see, the system looks much more aesthetically appealing, and it's a lot easier to do. The air is pumped in and out at the bottom, the arc crosses at the top, where all the nitric acid is stored, then it is pumped into this container where it is distilled into the water. You can see the nitrous gas if I hold a white piece of paper behind, and I think that's pretty cool. Now to make this better, I replaced the mason jar with a flower pot because the thinner jar allows the bubbles to evaporate into the water much easier. Now coming back to our containers full of potassium nitrate, we're going to add nitric acid into both of them until our pH turns neutral. Adding the nitric acid is what actually turns it into potassium nitrate. Now let's just get rid of the excess water, which means we're going to get a hot plate or a stove and cook all of the water out. And after about 30 minutes, we're left with a decent amount of potassium nitrate with some other byproducts. Potassium nitrate is useless to us like this, so we're gonna go ahead and crush it down in a plastic bag. Now that you've acquired potassium nitrate, everything's super easy from here on out. All that you need is sulfur, and I have no idea how to make this, so just buy it because it's so useful. Now we're going to be using the original recipe that the Chinese discovered a few hundred years ago. That's 75% potassium nitrate, 15% charcoal, and 10% sulfur. Potassium nitrate pulls moisture from the air. I recommend cooking it in your oven at 250 degrees for 20 minutes. But only do this right before you're about to mix everything. The last step in making this is straining all 3 powders to make sure it's extremely fine. Now that everything's extremely fine, it's ready to make. Also, I stained my entire suit making this, but it's all right. This recipe is extremely easy because everything adds up to 100 grams. So add 15 grams of charcoal, and then mix that with 10 grams of sulfur, and then add 75 grams of potassium nitrate. Now just go ahead and mix everything up, and you're essentially done. It's kind of crazy that you can make this stuff completely at home, and if you live near a volcano, entirely from scratch. Now let's go and try some of this stuff out. Beautiful. That's neat. It's almost a blue color. I've never seen that before. Have you ever watched a movie where they have a trail of black powder? I'm interested to see if this works, so let's try it out. The amount of dopamine that gave me that it worked. I have constructed an extremely long line of it. The sparks are jumping. They're catching the wind and jumping. Dang. You probably already know, black powder used in tons of fireworks. So let me show you how to make them. This, my friends, was an artillery shell. Now let me light some of the contents that were inside. That was black powder mixed with some of those little crackly shells. But if you take apart this end right here, that stuff is triple F black powder. So it's the finest and best performing stuff there is. Let me show you what this stuff does. I forgot I left that stuff out and it got rained on and ruined, but I was supposed to show you the difference between my black powder and that black powder. The homemade stuff works really good, but not as good as the triple F black powder. You can still use it to make some pretty cool fireworks. Let me show you how. Go online and purchase yourself an empty firework casing. They come in big packs of like 30. Instead, you can use like toilet paper tubing though. Now you need some Visco fuse, and if you don't want to buy this stuff, you can make it using one of the tutorials that I've already provided. So I'll show you how to make it. You've actually already finished most of the steps you need to make a fuse. All you need now is yarn and water. Any string should work as long as it's absorbent. I'm actually using twine here. Fill up a pan with a very small amount of water and then add your twine to the water. Make sure you don't turn on the heat yet, then add your potassium nitrate. Now turn on the heat and cook it until all the water boils off. Now this step's super important. You need to stir this stuff and make sure not to cook it too far, otherwise it can burn while you're using it and you'll have to restart. Now cap one end off with a piece of tape or with the red stuff that it comes with, and then you're going to fill it up with the black powder that you've previously made. Now use a piece of tape or just cap it off with the caps that it comes with. Now take a small knife and carve out a hole in the center. Now we're going to go ahead and slide our fuse in, but by itself, this will not work. So you're gonna tape it up a ton. Preferably you'd use paper tape, but if you have Scotch tape, that'll work, you just need much more. I said tape it up a lot, and I meant it. This is what we got so far, and let's go light it. If you're using Scotch tape, you have to tape it up a lot, but if you're using paper tape, you really don't have to tape it up that much. So let's light it and see what this thing does. My theory is that it's gonna blow out the sides because I'm using Scotch tape. Paper tape holds it in much better.
This one is gonna be sick.